Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for being here with me today. We're going to shift our format a little bit, and today we're going to go into a little bit of spotlight coaching. So, I want to make this really tangible and useful for you. I would love feedback on the video. So, if you find this format really helpful, if this is really resonating with you, let me know in the comments, or better yet, hit me up over on the gram, only because I tend to be a bit better at seeing messages and such on Instagram. I'll have the URL, my user handle, in the show notes. All right, so today's question is looking at it from the perspective of our career. I've achieved a stable career and income, which is amazing. Yay. But I feel like I've hit an invisible ceiling. How do I move beyond it? This is such a great question, and it is one that I think as we start to reach a certain stage of our career, more of us start to feel this way. There's actually three steps that I'm going to share with you today on how to start moving beyond this invisible ceiling, what that could look like for you, and start to create growth again in our professional life. But before I dive into that really quick, what I want you to consider, if this is you, if this is resonating with you, where you're like, yeah, that's me. I feel like there's this kind of, I can't get past this wall. Ask yourself first if there is actually a wall. One of the things that I notice so often with the women that I work with is that we reach this stage of familiarity within our work, especially. That's how we're going to frame all of today, but it can happen in every area of our life. And we have this sense that we need to be pushing past it. And maybe we do, maybe we don't. But that's phase one. Where do you actually want to be? Because perhaps where you are right now is great and you're loving it, but there's this outside pressure that's telling you you should want more, you should be growing, you should be going after, promotions or increases or whatever. And just understand, is the call coming from the inside or is the call coming from the outside? And if it's coming from the outside, it's a whole different conversation. So we're going to approach this as if the call is coming from the inside. Inside, we are having this sense of, okay, everything is good, everything is fine, I'm happy and joyful in my work, and yet I feel like I'm bumping against something that I can't see. How do I move past it because I'm ready for more? So we're going to talk about this in 3 steps. First step is clarity. This one is the biggest, most powerful step of them all, because everything else actually fuels out of this step. So there's a double-edged sword that happens when we have a stable career and income. The first, side of it is that, well, we're financially secure. Yay! This is something that so many people are striving for. We know what to expect in our day-to-day. And there's this steady, predictable vibe that can actually be sometimes so helpful, especially if there's other things or other areas in our life that are feeling a little bit crazy. So when we have this sense of comfort, because it's this steady, predictable, safe, secure space, your heart might be asking for more, better, different, but your subconscious mind is going to be going, no dice, sister. We're not going anywhere. This space is safe. This space is secure. We know this space. I don't care if you want more. This is fine, right? Because our subconscious is always wanting to keep us safe and secure and in survival. So if what we're doing now works, it's paying our bills, it's, we have a steady day to day, we know what to expect. Our subconscious mind is very happy because it goes, okay, we know how to handle this. So we want to just be aware of the fact that this double-edged sword is in existence in this space, because without that awareness, you might feel like you're like fighting an extra fight, because you might be going well, why can't I get going? That's why, because your subconscious is just trying to keep you safe and secure and living from one day to the next, and it doesn't really care if you're feeling like you're expanding. Now, with that awareness, we want to build clarity. Okay, so we want to understand what is it that we actually want? So we start by playing in this space. So some things for you to consider are how would you describe the invisible ceiling? You have this sense that there's a barrier between here and where you want to go, but like, how would you describe that invisible ceiling? And more than just like, it just feels like there's this invisible force. But like, give yourself more. Write it down, journal it out, talk it through, chat it through with your spouse or with a friend. Start to understand like what are you perceiving as actually being in the way? What do you envision being on the other side of it? So if you are having this sense, so often this invisible ceiling is one that we have historically seen in the context of, like you're, especially for women, you want to go in higher rungs of leadership in an organization, but historical norms have said it's only men of a certain, I don't know, race that happen to have like reach those rungs, or you need to have certain education or certain experience, and you just can't get past that barrier. So understanding like, what do you actually envision being on the other side? That will help give you some clarity as to where we're going. What could moving beyond it actually look like for you? Such a powerful question to dig into. What might this look like? So put yourself on the other side. On the other side of this invisible barrier, what might that actually look like for you? Start playing in this space. All of this is intending to give you clarity in terms of where are you going, so that you can start to, you'll leverage this into the next few steps. So things like, is it that you're wanting to have a greater impact in your work? Are you wanting more income? Do you want to change industries entirely? Is the invisible ceiling in your professional life actually just a mask for another area of your life that is asking for an upgrade? This is something that actually happens fairly often, where we perceive that there's something wrong, that there's something missing in an area of our life where actually everything is fine, but we are more okay with looking at that area and going, hey, something's missing here, than going, oh my God, there's a dumpster fire over here, but I'm unwilling to look at it. So therefore, I'm going to focus on fixing over here. Now, this is where working with a coach can be so helpful, because the right coach can really help you dig through some questions, start to like listen for certain words and phrases that you're saying, and pull through the full picture of your life. If you don't have a great coach, or you don't know a coach, I'm taking a few clients right now. So like, you can find the URL in the show notes below, and or you can just like do a quick search for coaches in your area, and even like look for certain topics of things. Okay. Now, what I want to impart is that this is one of the struggles I know for myself. Clarity can take time. You may not know, in your first sit down session with your journal, or even in your 10th conversation with your spouse, what you actually want, and what, the other side of that invisible ceiling is going to look like. So it can take some time. Practicing patience is going to be really core here, because certainly you want to make sure that you are giving yourself grace and space to stretch the boundaries a little bit. And let me dive into this next little piece, because this will be really useful if you have no idea where to start, but you know that you want to start somewhere. Bless you for following the call of your heart and going, okay, look, I don't know what it's going to look like, but we are going to make some movement happen. Here's where you can actually like work with hopefully you have a really great boss, work with your boss to start picking up some stretch work. So for example, maybe you're like really integrated in a team, but you want to start exploring other opportunities. Perhaps you can work alongside another team for a few weeks to understand their work. Could give you a really unique insight into some skills that you have. Perhaps you're really good at solving certain kinds of problems that you didn't realize you were really skilled at. You can maybe take a few things off your boss's plate. This is really, really awesome. If you also, heads up, if you're leading a team, I talked about this in the podcast somewhere. I'll link the episode in the show notes for you. But how one of the ways to like expand your impact without creating burnout is to delegate tasks. So this is a two-way thing, and I expand on it further in the podcast. I'm not going to do it today. But what that can mean is that you actually are like, you as the leader are are removing things from your workload. And as a result, the person who is wanting to stretch their boundaries has this opportunity to do more. So if you are the person wanting to stretch their boundaries, this is a really great way to do so because you'll be helping your boss out. You'll be expanding your impact, which is very awesome. And it will give you some insights into like other kinds of work and whether that might feel good for you. One other thing that you can try doing, and there's millions of ideas, and listen, if you need some brainstorming, like reach out to me because this is my jam. But one of the other things you can do is set up some skip level meetings with people either further up the org chart if you work for a big company and you have like many rungs higher up the org chart. Okay, they're not better than you, they're not higher than you, but like up the organizational chart or across other companies and industries. So these meetings are intended to be relatively short, clear. Again, I go in on the podcast, I go very clear on how to reach out for these, how to set them up, what your intent is going to be. But these things can actually start giving you insight as to where your next move might go, what that might look like for you. And that can be really helpful. And the thing that I find that certainly as we become somewhat embedded in our careers is that sometimes we don't even know what's possible. So by stretching our boundaries a little bit, by stretching our exposure a little bit, you might start to find that there are elements of work or opportunities in areas that you never even thought of or weren't even aware of as like being a thing that feel really fulfilling. So step one of how do I break through the invisible ceiling is clarity. What do I actually want? All right. Step two is self-reflection. Now, I will say all three of these steps, they all like mix together. They sort of are like soup. They kind of like all blend to make this delicious, lovely end product. But step two, our second ingredient is self-reflection. So this is where I want you to really focus in and notice the kind of energy that you're currently embodying. Are you wanting to move into leadership, but your daily actions are those of someone who, doesn't lead, only does what's required, complains about what isn't working? So something that I've seen, oh my goodness, so many times in various jobs that I've had where someone might say like, well, I really would like to be leading a team, or almost this sense of like entitlement. I should be leading a team. I'm skilled at that, but not moving as a leader would move in what they're doing already. And I'm not at all a believer of like doing jobs that you're not getting paid for, but it is the energy in which you are doing your work. You can, if and leadership is such a nice way to frame this example. You can act as a leader even if you are currently an individual contributor. You can act as a leader of a greater team even if you have a team of say only 5 people right now. There are ways for us to step and hold a different kind of energy that are beginning to align us to where we want to go. And so the self-reflection is, what is it that you're doing now? How are you moving now? How are you behaving now? Do you step into work and immediately fall into your automatic mode, where you just do the things how you've always done them and you've done them so often that like you could do them in your sleep? If there's a sense of wanting greater fulfillment in your work, but you're maybe not wanting to go for a promotion, you're not super interested in, changing jobs or changing companies, maybe there's an opportunity, and this is where that self-reflection can help, of going, hey, is there a way that I can actually like play with the work that I have now and do it in a way that'd be more fun, right? Like there's always lots of spaces for us to stretch and play in those things. The key is to start turning your gaze inward to notice how you're stepping into your days and notice the parts that feel good and the parts that are like chafing at the bit for something more. And this little piece of self-reflection can be the part that really gives you good insight to understand, are you actually wanting something different in your professional life? Or is that sense of there's something more, something greater, something different out there for me? Is it actually something that's maybe more in another area of your life? Because For example, if we want to talk about it for like a romantic relationship, perhaps you've been with the same person for a long time. There's nothing wrong in that relationship, but you find yourself starting to have the sense of like chafing at the bit. Maybe you're a little bit bored with your daily routine. Maybe you feel like, well, like this person's fine, but what if I were to date, I don't know, somebody who whatever looks like Brad Pitt or whatever. Like noticing those things what actually could be indicative in that space, because your relationship could be wonderful and it could be healthy and you may never want to be with anybody else. You may have found your person and you're like, why am I having these feelings? Why am I having this sense that like something here needs to change? It could be something as small as a little tweak to your day to day that can certainly like create a sense of more joy, more satisfaction in the time that you're sharing with your person. But it actually also could be an indication that there's another area of your life that's going, hello, I would like some updating here, but you're unwilling to look at it. So you're like, well, let's just like focus over here, right? That can happen. Again, this is where working with a coach can be super helpful. So coming back, noticing the parts that feel good, the parts that are chafing at the bit for something more. If you're noticing this in your career where you are having this sense of like, this work is fine, but I actually want to have more. I want to have greater impact. I would like to increase my income. I would like to, I don't know, have like exposure to some different kinds of projects or some different kind of work. Noticing the parts that are saying more, please. Those are really good spaces to lean into, because those are the spaces that will actually give you insight into where you may want to grow. So let's say, for example, you have a customer-centric type of role and your relationship with your customers are fine, but you're having this sense of like disconnection where you're like, man, I just would like to feel more fulfillment in the work that I'm doing. It might actually come through something as simple as like building a deeper connection with your customers. Like honestly, that could be all that it is. And you might realize that as a result, I actually really love creating personal connections with customers. And perhaps that might highlight that this is something that the company that you're currently with doesn't see as a value, doesn't want you to focus in on. So that might be an indication to give you some insight to go, okay, so perhaps then I'm shifting to a company who wants to have not just the technical expertise that I have, but actually like focuses on building these client relationships. Right? It doesn't always have to be a giant thing. That invisible ceiling is just a feedback point for you saying, we'd like something more. Let's go find it. Okay. So a couple of things. Let me say that differently. If you are very clear on what you want and where you want to grow, this is amazing. So clarity for you. You've already got that figured out. You know where you want to go. Yay. You are very clear how you want to grow. Then you can leverage this clarity and practice the self-reflection on how you are starting to stand in the new space now. This is a big deal. So this is where you'll hear manifestation teachers talk about this as acting as if. This is where I've seen in corporate world, you may have the opportunity to be like an acting manager or an acting whatever it is. But even before you're stepping into a different opportunity, before you're changing jobs or anything, practice the self-reflection to see, well, what are you doing today that's already standing in that new energy? So for example, if you want to move into leadership, are you acting like the leader that you want to be already? We touched on this already, but it is worth doubling down on. Are you already moving in the way that you would move as this new, different, other experience, right? If you're wanting more responsibility in your role, maybe you don't want to have a promotion, maybe you don't want to change jobs, maybe you don't want to start a business, or maybe you already have a business, I don't know, but like maybe you're wanting more responsibility. Well, are you showing now a high degree of responsibility in your work already? Or are there things, and this is where like being honest with yourself is going to be really critical. Are you sloughing responsibility? Do you notice yourself saying phrases like, that's not my job, that's not my problem, that's somebody else has to take care of that? There's a fine line. You're not going out to micromanage and like take over everybody else's job. But notice if there are spaces that are natural for you to take on more responsibility, that you are currently pushing away. That can be really helpful. And then step 3 is daily calibration. So this is actually the part that this feels the hardest and the most boring and is the piece that's going to move the needle the most. So daily calibration is effectively to begin standing in the new space. To give you some examples, I want to actually create this as some examples instead of just like notes. So when I was working in tech, and when I started, I was an individual contributor. So I was working directly with our clients. And I knew I wanted something more. I knew I wanted a different role. I was starting to set meetings with other teams to understand the work that they were doing, to understand the problems that they were solving. And I was looking for the fit of where I wanted to be. But in my daily work, I was also calibrating myself at a higher level. So I was already starting to operate as, okay, so someone who might be on, this team. Well, what are the things that I'm noticing that they have said? Okay, so for example, they figure out problems and then they highlight the problem, they start postulating a solution, and they start creating this thing, and they work in tandem with their boss to go, hey, I think we could do this better. Well, how can I start doing that in the work that I'm doing today? When I was in leadership and I was leading a team, I had been with this team for a while and I knew I was ready for my next role. I knew I wanted a bigger impact. I knew I wanted to be doing a, how do I say this? Like a bigger umbrella of work. I wanted to be touching more souls. What would that look like? So even as I was exploring roles and I was applying for roles and I was interviewing for different things, and I was looking for the right fit, even while that was all happening and before that was happening in my day-to-day, I was calibrating as someone who was already operating at that level. So, for example, in that particular case, I wanted to be, so at the moment I had been leading individual contributors and I wanted to be leading other leaders. So I started asking myself, well, if I were to lead other leaders, what are the things that make me nervous about doing that? So one of the things, and this was not easy, but was really helpful, was it makes me really nervous to give feedback or to provide coaching to someone who's also leading a team. Okay, so how can I start doing that now? How can I start practicing that now and doing it in a way that's respectful? Because we all know somebody who's gunning for a promotion and tries to micromanage the shit out of all of us, right? So, how can I start doing that now in a way that's respectful? So, I'm building the skill, I'm acting as the person who naturally would do that. And I'm also like already naturally creating impact through the work that I'm doing today. This is super powerful. When we start calibrating daily into that energy, it can be really helpful. Now, you don't have to just do this through the tangible aspects of your work. I'll share this last little tidbit and then we'll close out the video for today. At the time, I was hitting the gym probably 4 or 5 times a week. Now, when I say hitting the gym, we have a gym. I've built a gym downstairs. So my go-to at the time was the treadmill. It was one of my favorite things. I would finish my day of work. I would go downstairs. I'd get on the treadmill. Or if I started a little later in the morning, I'd hit the treadmill in the morning before I got started on the rest of my workday. On the treadmill. So whether I'm walking or running, and you can do this no matter what kind of like other activity you have in your life, but I'm going to frame this in the context of this is exactly how I did it. I was on the treadmill. We have no view, okay? Like the gym is in the basement. The treadmill at this time was looking into the laundry room. So like I'm looking at a washing machine and a dryer and the foundation wall of the house. It's not an exciting view. I didn't have like motivational posters or everything up. But what I would do is I'd pop on my headphones. I'd put on music that felt really motivating, that had the right beat, because of course I was running, so I needed something that had enough momentum to like keep going as I was going through the running. But I would get myself into the space just naturally through exercise. This is something that's really powerful for me for movement. And I would start envisioning my energy as being someone who naturally leads people. And this is very much in the woo, but like I got to tell you, I do honestly think this was the biggest leverage point that helped me achieve promotions as quickly as I did, because I got promoted way faster than any of my peers did, way sooner than what was like considered normal for the company, even in tech, which naturally moves very fast anyway. But I would be in the space and my body was moving. Everything was like warm in the sense that my blood was circulating and I felt really good in my body. And I really enjoy doing this. And then I would double into that space of, okay, and now I envisioned it like the cosmic plane, and I could just see around me. There were people around me. There were supports around me. There were the light that was shining from me was calling people in, and people were drawn into working with me, were drawn into like having an impact as a result of working with me and working on my team. And even though that was not exactly the work that I did, the role that I ended up taking on had elements of that and like way more. And it was a very, very cool experience. I really, really loved it. But these were these daily calibration steps. And it wasn't that I want to just clarify, you're not hitting the gym every single day unless that's your normal route. You don't have to do like the one thing day in, day in, day in, but daily calibrating into that energy and movement as someone who is already in this new level will make a massive difference. And it will naturally, because it has to, this is how the quantum world works, it will naturally shift what's happening around you so that you will actually move into that next opportunity. It could just come into you. It could be that you all of a sudden everything clicks and this job that you've been really wanting comes together. It can be all kinds of things. So when we're talking about, how do I move beyond this invisible ceiling? I can feel this invisible ceiling. We practice clarity, self-reflection, and then the daily calibration is what helps us move past it. Okay. And then when you're on the other side, yay, that's a whole different topic of growth. I'm going to cap it there because certainly I can like dive into this super deep, and that's not what we're here for today. Let me know in the comments if this has been helpful. If you have questions that you'd like further clarification on, I can certainly record some more videos for you in the future. And with that, my loves, we're on the YouTubes. So do the things, hit subscribe, hit follow, hit like, all the things that we're supposed to do on the YouTube channels so that YouTube knows to send you more of these things. Okay? And with that, I wish you the very best week ahead, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.